Many thanks to the channel members, Rafi Ultron and Brian Bierce, for their valuable support to this project. That said, let's begin with the video. The next day, Yewoon waits while thinking it's 10 past 6 and that there's still some time left. This is because he left earlier than necessary. Since he's going to a familiar place, he could have taken a bit longer. He wonders if she's okay or if she has a headache. He starts fixing his hair, but then realizes that, for some reason, he's nervous. Even though he's seen Haein many times, and they've even gone out drinking together, he thought this time wouldn't be any different. However, now that it's an actual date, it feels completely different. He wonders if his hair looks all right, if there's anything out of place. At that moment, his date arrives and asks what he's doing. The question catches him off guard, and he responds by asking if she also left early. The girl explains that her uncle told her he'd take care of the studio until 9, so she had free time, and that's why she left earlier than planned. Then she steps a bit closer, looks at him carefully, and tells him not to worry. His hair looks fine. Yewoon laughs, a little nervous, and asks if she's serious. Then he suggests they go right away because he's hungry. Curious, Haein asks where they're going today, whether it's a restaurant only he knows or a more casual dinner. The young man smiles confidently and asks if she likes spicy food. So, they head to a restaurant that specializes in spicy food. Yewoon mentions that the place is famous for its delicious jambong. He adds that it's not only tasty but also fun because you can try different levels of spiciness. That catches Haein's attention and she asks if he likes spicy food. He replies only a little and suggests that if she doesn't like it, she can order the basic level while he's going to order level 3 or 4. That surprises Haein, who comments that he really does like spicy food. Then she calls the waiter and asks if the restaurant offers a level 6 spiciness. The waiter says yes, which surprises Yewoon. When he checks the menu again, he realizes it only goes up to level 4. Haein explains that there are secret levels, going up to level 8, intended for true spice lovers. She also tells him that the last time she was at a place like this, she tried level 7 and thought she was going to die from the heat. She adds that because it's so intense, it wouldn't be good for him to eat something that spicy, so she'll join him by ordering level 6. Yewoon, visibly embarrassed, replies that if that's the case, he'll also order level 6. Haein asks if he's serious and tells him he doesn't have to try so hard. But he insists that since they came together, he prefers to eat the same thing as her. It makes him feel like they're really sharing the meal. Upon hearing that, she looks at him with admiration, and a cute but small smile appears on her lips. Then she declares they'll order 2 bowls of level 6 jambong with a bit of spicy honey. When the dishes arrive, the waiter wishes them enjoyment, revealing that both bowls have an intense crimson color. Seeing them, Yewoon wonders if he'll really be able to enjoy it since it looks extremely spicy. Haein asks if he'll be okay and he says yes. Then he questions how spicy it can really be. He believes that once you reach a certain level, all spiciness should feel the same as before. But upon tasting it, he experiences true terror. He starts coughing and his face turns red. Haein can't help but worry and asks if he's okay. She explains that you have to start by drinking the broth to get used to it. She asks if he wants her to order him a less spicy broth since she doesn't think he can handle this level. But Yewoon refuses and says he can keep eating. They both enjoy this super spicy meal. After eating, Yewoon looks visibly exhausted. Haein asks if he's okay. He replies yes, that he just has a split lip, a cramp in his spine, and his hands and feet are numb from the acidity. That makes the girl say that clearly, in the end, he's not okay. She reminds him that's why she told him not to try so hard. He didn't even finish the dish. Yewoon, looking at her, asks if she's okay. Haein replies yes and reveals that she's a fan of spicy food. Yewoon admits he lost, and Haein tells him not to compete over that. He reflects that he chose that restaurant to have a fun and relaxed conversation, but they couldn't talk about anything. He just kept repeating that the food was spicy. He confesses to himself that it's been a total disaster. Haein, after looking at him for a few seconds, asks if he has to go home now. He replies that he doesn't have anything to do today. Then the girl asks if he wants to go somewhere to rest or do something else. Curious, he asks where they'll go to relax, and Haein says she knows a good place where they can relax comfortably. She gets up and asks him to follow her. She's going to show him. He nods, but while following her, he wonders what place she's referring to and where exactly they'll comfortably relax. They pass by some places that could be good for resting, but none of them catch his attention because all he can do is look at Hain, blushing a little. They finally arrive, just as someone is singing while playing the guitar. When they finish, the person thanks the audience and announces that their group is called The Beggars and the Fishermen. Yeowoon is surprised, but quickly asks if when she said rest a little, she meant going to a live music bar. Hain confirms it and tells him that on weekdays there's open mic, so you only have to pay for drinks and can enjoy the show for free. The young man looks puzzled, and Hain tells him to sit down, that she'll bring him a beer. Already seated, he reflects that he was foolish to imagine silly things. He felt a bit disappointed, but thinking it over, it makes no sense to have had unfounded expectations. Then, he reconsiders and admits to himself that he didn't know a place like that existed near the university. He's passed by that spot almost every day and never noticed it. Hain returns with the beers and Yeowoon thanks her. She asks if he's okay. He says yes, though he's worried about how he'll feel in the morning. To that, she replies not to die. Then, another person goes on stage and introduces themselves as Bittersweet Butterfly. They announce that this is their second ever performance, so they might forget the lyrics or have a slightly off rhythm. Even so, they ask the audience to enjoy their music. The first song is called Like Before. The couple starts watching the show attentively, and Yeowoon thinks about the place. The cheap orange lights, the sticky tables, the rough sound of the speakers, and the audience listening in silence. It's an indie concert, and everything feels new and unfamiliar to him. He knows that Hain has lived in a world he doesn't know. Then he looks at her, gets closer, and tells her that he thinks the place is very beautiful. Then he takes a sip of his beer. Hain watches him, does the same, and calls out to him. Then she tells him that she also likes it a lot. They look at each other, and then simply keep drinking their beers while watching the show. The singer thanks the audience and announces that they'll now perform the next song. The next piece is called It Doesn't Freeze. For some reason, we're taken into one of Yeowoon's memories. At that moment, he asks if she only played with him. Ryun replies that he only loved her on his own terms, that they spent a lot of time together, that they have the same tastes, but that doesn't mean she has to love him back. She states that love is not the same as empathy, and that just because he's passionate doesn't mean she is too. We return to the present. Yeowoon reflects that even if they share interests and have spent many moments together, that doesn't mean the other person has to feel the same. That empathy and love are different things, but just for today, he thought he'd like that kind of love to exist.
After the performance, the girl thanks the audience and hopes they had a bittersweet experience. She also asks them to follow her on Instagram and expresses her wish to see them again at her next show. The couple watching her applauds. Hain asks if they can leave now, but Yeowoon, curious, reminds her there's still one group left to perform. However, Hain explains that it's almost 9 o'clock and she has to return to the studio, though she asks if he wants to stay a bit longer. The boy shakes his head and says he will leave as well. As they leave the place, the young man comments that the site she showed him is great, and he didn't know a place like that existed near his university. Hain tells him that on weekends, sometimes famous bands perform, and there are also rock DJ parties until dawn, although other genres are mixed in too. She suggests that next time they go out, they return there and stay late. Yeowoon agrees and thinks it's an excellent idea. Then, Hain sees a convenience store and asks if he wants an ice cream before leaving. The boy replies he wouldn't mind, but asks if she still has time. She answers yes, if they eat quickly. So, Yeowoon offers to buy them and asks what flavor she wants. She replies that he can choose the flavor for her. Finally, he gives her a lemon ice cream and Hain thanks him. They both sit in silence, enjoying their ice creams. Then, Yeowoon asks if there are many clients who booked the studio today. His companion replies yes, that it's full until the last hour. She explains that it's currently university festival season and many bands go to practice, so they're very busy. Yeowoon becomes interested in the university festivals and remembers they will have one soon as well. He mentions it was originally scheduled for early May, but it was postponed for some reason. Hain, upon hearing that, asks if he goes to University X, since a group from that university came that very day. The young man, curious, asks how they play, but she clarifies that she doesn't strictly evaluate club bands and that music is just to enjoy. After that brief explanation, they fall silent again, until Yo-woon thinks of something and asks Hain why she decided to go out to eat with him today. The girl, curious, asks why he's asking and says the answer is obvious. It was he who invited her to eat. Yo-woon explains that it felt strange, since they'd never done anything like that before, and suddenly he invited her to eat and then go for a walk. Hain looks at him curiously and reminds him they've already drunk together and had a music tasting, among other things. Yo-woon confirms, recalling when they did that in his apartment, and then admits he said something silly. But he reflects that, although he knows it, there's nothing more to confirm. Only that he can't believe there's someone so cheerful who wouldn't mind dying crushed by the things she loves, a wonderful person who hasn't lost her dreams or goals. The fact that there's someone like that by his side who likes the same things as he does seems incredible to him. That's why he keeps asking questions, because the only thing he needs is her consent. After finishing the ice cream, Hain says it was delicious and that it's her first time trying it. Then she asks Yo-woon if they have similar culinary tastes, stating that they both like spicy food. The young man replies that they do. Then he leans toward her, and in the next moment, he kisses her. After the kiss, they remain silent for a few seconds. Yo-woon reflects that it was cold, soft, and the best part, it tasted like lemon. Then Hain gets up and asks if they can leave now. She explains that the people who reserved the studio will arrive soon, and she has to get it ready. Yo-woon replies yes, that they're leaving now. They start walking toward the studio. The young man watches her from behind and notices she's walking faster than before. That's why he can't see her expression. But then he thinks he's crazy, and that in the end, he just did what he wanted. He believes he made the same mistake again, something for which she'll hate him. Hain looks at him and asks if he's going to the station now. He confirms. Then she says she's going in a different direction and says goodbye. Yo-woon does the same, but first tells her he had a really good day. However, his face shows some disappointment. Then Hain brings up the earlier thing and walks toward him with firm steps. She gives him a light punch in the stomach and declares that they'll talk about that properly another day, as she has no time now. The young man nods and says goodbye again. It is revealed that she is slightly blushing and somewhat serious. She turns around and says goodbye again. Yo-woon watches her one last time before lowering his gaze. But after that, he looks happy. He tells himself that it's okay, that it was something incredible. Meanwhile, at the music store, Hain arrives, slowly runs her hand over the accessories, and sits on a chair. She crosses her legs and sits there, thoughtful, serious, and slightly blushing. She starts spinning the chair and thinks that he seemed like he wanted to tell her something, so she gave him some time. But suddenly, he kissed her. She wonders if he had planned to do it from the beginning, although she also thinks she let her guard down without realizing it. Then she says she doesn't know, that she can't think, and it's all that idiot's fault. She confesses to herself that she's going crazy, and that it feels like something is boiling inside her. At that moment, the group that reserved the studio arrives. A boy speaks to the band from University X and asks if they can use room C. Hain confirms and informs them that if they need more microphones or cables, they just need to tell her. They leave, and Hain watches them. Then she tells herself she needs to calm down and put on her mask, because if someone saw her current expression, they'd think she was mocking them. Then she starts to draw something, or at least tries, because what she really wants is to go home, take a shower, and change clothes. Because in that state, she can't do anything. She feels uncomfortable. She wonders what's going on and curses Yo-woon, stating that he can't just kiss her out of nowhere. Back at Yo-woon's apartment, he's lying on the bed, reflecting on what happened. He thinks it was fresh and soft with a lemon flavor. He confesses he will probably never forget it. while staring at the full moon and its glow. He reflects that it was the first time he felt that texture of consent. But it's not the only important moment, because at the same time, in a whiskey bar, two people who know each other meet by chance, but pretend they don't. The bar owner believes he's a regular customer and that they met by chance. The young man, for his part, thinks maybe it's her day off and wonders if she'd be upset if he talked to her.
Yeowoon is calmly washing the dishes with a slight smile on his face until Shin-young shows up and asks if something good happened to him, since he seems so happy he's almost singing the moment he arrives at work. He replies that he's simply in a good mood because the weather is nice. Even so, his coworker suspects there's something more behind his happiness. Then, Yeowoon asks why she hasn't gone home, and Shin-young says the boss asked her to keep an eye on him for 5 minutes because she went out to buy more milk. But then she looks at him closely and asks how things are going with the girl he mentioned before. The young man smiles and replies that it's going so-so. Without missing a beat, his coworker tells him that if, by chance, things don't work out, he should let her know, because she'll take him out for drinks. Yeowoon asks why she would do that, and she responds by questioning him back. Why does he ask so much? She says it's obvious she's interested. That leads Yeowoon to ask her if it's true. Shin-young loses patience and replies that of course she's interested, but that doesn't mean she likes him. For now, she just wants to talk to him and asks him not to feel uncomfortable. In the end, Yeowoon replies that it doesn't matter to him, but asks why she's interested in him if they've barely talked. Shin-young says that even if he's not interested in her, it still stings a little to hear him say it so bluntly. The guy replies that he was just curious. She answers that it's nothing out of the ordinary, so there's no reason to hide it. She explains that, first of all, he caught her attention because he's tall. She also remembers that when they were studying, she saw him quietly picking up some tissues that had fallen on the floor, and that made her think he was a responsible person, which motivated her to want to talk to him. Yeowoon watches her in silence for a few seconds and asks if that's all. Shin-young nods, but then throws him a question, wondering if he thinks that kind of interest is weird. Before Yeowoon can answer, a customer arrives wanting to place an order. Shin-young immediately switches to her customer service role and greets the new customer. Yeowoon is left thinking he doesn't find it weird, just a bit surprising, since his reasons weren't so different. He remembers that his interest in Hain simply started because they often took the last train together. He looks at his coworker and reflects that because of what happened last time, he thought she took feelings lightly, but maybe she was just very honest when expressing them. Just then, she catches him staring. She asks what he's looking at, and Yeowoon replies, nothing, but then adds that she'll surely find someone good, and that, in his opinion, she's a good person too. Shin-young says that sounds way too definitive, and that she hasn't even invited him for a drink yet, so she asks him not to put up so many walls. She also warns him not to let his guard down. Even if things seem to be going well with the girl he likes, who knows if they'll end up dating or not? She poses the hypothetical, what if she rejects him terribly? The young man asks if that's something one says to a coworker. Just then, the boss arrives and tells Shin-young that she can go home now. She's happy to hear it. But as she leaves, she sticks her tongue out at Yeowoon and jokingly says she hopes he gets rejected, which annoys him. However, he thinks he still hasn't received an answer from Haein and believes she doesn't like to talk by text or phone. And if he can't meet her tonight either, he'll have to settle for sending her a little goodnight message. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the city, the music group is celebrating a new collaboration. Hyunjae says everyone worked very hard and today is a party day, so he invites everyone to enjoy and drink a lot, cheering them up with the food and drinks offered. Haein asks if they've already set the release date for the collaboration, and Hyunjae replies yes, it will be June 27th, and on the 20th, they'll release a teaser video. He tells her she can share the news on Instagram. The girl reflects that it's still quite far off and thinks it might be a weak excuse to invite him. Then Hyunjae asks if she wants to see the album cover. He shows them how amazing the cover turned out with the color combination. One of the band members comments that it looks great and closely resembles the design Han made, something she gladly acknowledges. She also says they captured Yukin's features very well and that it was interesting to see him illustrated by someone else. Hyunjae watches her smiling and asks what she's working on lately, if she's making any songs. She replies yes, that she has many demos piled up and will choose one to finish. She'll probably record it next week. Hyunjae comments that she's very hardworking, but she just finished a collaboration, so he thought she'd take a break. Then Ki-hoon, the guitarist, contradicts him, saying he knows he's been very busy with events lately. Hyunjae laughs, confessing that he wanted to pretend he was a lazy musician. He adds that he's actually very busy, with lots of small concerts, managing the company, and producing the soundtrack for a series. Then he glances sideways at Hain and says he's going to launch his own record label. The girl smiles and asks if it's finally happening, the thing he told her about a while ago. He replies that, for now, it'll be a personal label, and he's still thinking about which artist to sign. Excited, Ki-hoon asks how about signing their band, Idiot Dot, to which Hyunjae replies that they already have their own label, Watermelon Sounds. The guitarist says he didn't know that, and Hyunjae says it was obvious they'd be discovered soon, since they're a good band. He takes the opportunity to mention that he'd like to sign artists who are looking for new and interesting things, because that way it'll feel worthwhile to have started the company. Just then, Lim Ju-won, the bassist, calls him and asks if he wants to go out for a smoke. Hyunjae agrees and gets up to go with him. The guitarist wants to go too, but Ji-won says no, he should stay. Ki-hoon asks why he can't come, and the bassist replies that if he comes, it ruins the party vibe. That makes Ki-hoon puff up with pride and decide to stay. Outside, Hyunjae doesn't waste time and asks Ji-won if he's against his new label and doesn't like the idea. The blonde says he's not opposing. He hasn't even said anything yet. But Hyunjae says he knows Ji-won doesn't smoke and still brought him out on purpose. He asks if he interrupted the conversation to prevent him from signing Long Afternoon. Ji-won clarifies that he's not opposed, but he has a request. He wants Hyunjae to give Hain a big opportunity on an important stage. Hyunjae asks what he means. Ji-won says it could be a festival or a solo concert. He wants him to give Hain a chance, whether as part of the team or as an artist. He says she needs a goal. Right now, she underestimates herself and settles for being an unknown musician. But if she steps onto a big stage a few times, she'll start dreaming bigger. So much that she'll want to become an artist loved by many people. Hyunjae laughs and says that from what Ji-won says, it's clear he also thinks highly of Hain. Ji-won confirms it, saying that if he didn't, he wouldn't have joined that project. He's satisfied being part of the band and has already listened to the demos Hain wants to record. He assures Hyunjae that when he hears them, he'll understand the great rhythm that group has. That's why he asks him to open the final door so Hain can start having ambition. Hyunjae smiles and says he'll try, but in the end, it all depends on her. Because the only person who can open that door and walk out is the one who locked it in the first place. After leaving the celebration, Hae-in checks her phone and, seeing the time, comments that there's still a while before the last train. She sits on the ground and wonders what she should do. She says this is all nice, remembering the kiss with Yo-woon, but she also admits to herself that she doesn't know what to say about Long Afternoon. After many bottles of alcohol, Ki-hoon raises his voice, asking if Hain is really saying that Stevie Ray Vaughan's technique is better. He adds that his style is very diverse and still evolving. Hain firmly responds that Jimi Hendrix was the one who influenced Stevie Ray Vaughan, therefore she considers Hendrix the best guitarist. The discussion continues between them, while the bassist and drummer watch them in silence. The latter, by the way, comments that they seem to be arguing seriously, asking if they should intervene. Lim Ji-won tells him not to get involved, explaining that every time they drink, they end up debating about music. More precisely, about who is the best musician or which band is superior. Then, he looks at Jo-young and asks if she's not drinking, noticing that she's only eating the appetizers. Jo-young replies that she actually can't tolerate alcohol. This surprises Lim Ji-won, who asks why she didn't say so earlier, and adds that they'll have to have dinner together more often. At that moment, Hae-in asks them to wait a bit. She wonders what time it is and seems to realize it's already late. Sung Hyunjae checks his phone and says it's 11:30 at night. Upon hearing the time, Hae-in says the right thing would be to leave now to catch the subway in time. Hyunjae asks if she'll make the last train and assures her not to worry, since they can call her a taxi. Then he laughs and suggests she stay and drink with them all night, revealing his cheerful drunk personality. Hae-in clarifies that she's not actually leaving because of the train. She tells them she has a date. Ham Ki-hoon is startled and asks if she has a boyfriend. He remembers that last time she said she wasn't looking for anyone and calls her a liar. She looks at him somewhat serious and asks when she said that. She clarifies that she only mentioned she didn't want to be set up with anyone. The guitarist insists, asking why she always rejects the dates he arranges for her then. She replies that he only introduces her to weird people. Visibly hurt, he asks why she says that. He assures her he only introduced people he thought she might like. But Hain asks what she has to do with someone who dresses up as Sid Vicious, recalling the guy he once introduced her to. She then adds that they're not dating yet and that she's still thinking about it. Sung Hyun-jae asks what she's thinking. He asks if that guy is problematic or if he's a bad boy. She replies no, that he's a good person. She adds that he's kind and knows how to express himself well. But then she lowers her gaze and confesses that if there's a problem, that problem is her. Ham Ki-hoon jumps in saying the real problem is the violence she hides. She looks at him confused and asks what violence. But then she returns to the subject. She says she never imagined being in this situation. Finally, she reveals that the problem is that she is long afternoon. Her friend, curious and drunk, asks what's so bad about that. After all, many musicians end up dating their fans. Hain lowers her voice and confesses that he doesn't know she is long afternoon, and she's purposely hiding it. The guitarist doesn't understand. He asks how it's possible he hasn't noticed, that just by hearing her voice, he should have realized. Lim Ji-won chimes in. He explains that although it sounds similar, there's no way to prove it if she insists she's not long afternoon, and from the future boyfriend's point of view, he probably just thinks her voice is a bit similar. Hyun-jae asks why she doesn't just tell him. She hesitates, then says she doesn't want to. He asks why. She answers, lowering her gaze, that it's for a selfish reason. She loves his honest reaction when he listens to Long Afternoon. She remembers he said that good is good and weird is weird, that he's the first person she's met who speaks so passionately about her band. Seeing him focused listening to her music gives her the strength to keep composing. But if he knew she was Long Afternoon, he couldn't speak with the same honesty. Her mere existence would force him to fake it. And if one day he stopped liking the band, she'd have to smile in silence without saying a word. She's afraid that moment will come. That's why she doesn't want to tell him the truth. She confesses she doesn't know how to date him without revealing it, although she knows she'll have to eventually. Sung Hyun-jae tells her it's not necessary, that she simply doesn't have to tell him. She looks at him confused. He laughs and asks if he was too blunt. Then he speaks again, more calmly. He tells her that in love, what matters is what one feels. That if she feels insecure, she doesn't have to tell everything. There's no need to reveal everything when you're just getting to know someone. He confesses that he also met someone when he arrived in Korea. And in the end, he didn't tell them anything. He remembers he didn't talk about what his life was like as an immigrant, or about his family, or why he returned to Korea. He liked that person, but he also had weak points he didn't want to show. And he doesn't think that's selfish. On the contrary, keeping those flaws secret means he valued that relationship. Hain watches him in silence, thoughtful. But then he jokes, saying that doesn't mean she should hide her romantic affairs, which causes Ki-hoon to laugh and say that would be trashy. Finally, Hyun-jae advises her to do what she wants. Love can't be generalized. Hain lowers her gaze, swirling her empty glass, starting to delve into her thoughts. However, a bottle appears in front of her. It's Hyun-jae, offering to refill her glass. He tells her to think about it calmly. He reminds her she doesn't have to decide anything tonight. She doesn't need to meet that person tonight. She thinks about it, extends her glass, and replies that she'll think about it calmly. Meanwhile, Yo-woon walks down the street looking at his phone. He just received an email informing him he passed the document screening at all the companies where he applied for internships. He says to himself that of course he had to pass, but reminds himself not to get too happy since this is only the beginning. He wonders what he should wear for the interview. He says buying something is expensive, so maybe he should rent it. Then he considers that the best thing would be to buy a cheap suit and use it for all interviews. He looks at his phone and upon seeing a photo with Haein, wonders if they'll be able to meet today. He remembers her for a few seconds. Then he says that if they can't meet today either, it would be better to call her. It's not responsible to keep waiting without doing anything, since he was the one who took the initiative. He walks down the stairs with some hope, looking to see if she's at the bench where they usually meet. But the bench is empty. He is left alone, without a clear answer about their relationship. He thinks maybe this is a sign, maybe a rejection. But he immediately denies the idea. No need to rush. If they can't meet today, he'll call her. He believes it's not too late to regret, as long as there's a clear answer. He knows Haein isn't someone who holds back, so he doesn't think she would reject him passively. However, he wonders if this is the end. He questions what to do now. Then he hears a voice calling him. Yewoon turns and sees Haein. She smiles at him with a slight sparkle in her eyes, saying, "It's Yewoon," revealing she's a bit drunk. He asks her if she just got off work. But before she can say anything, Ham Ki-hoon steps between them with a serious and defiant expression. Silence envelops everything. Finally, Ki-hoon looks at him intently and asks if he is Yewoon, the guy Haein likes. He demands to know if he's the guy who dares to hurt his dear Haein. The question puts him on the spot, asking himself if he's really hurting her. Ki-hoon gets closer and closer. Yewoon, worried, asks again how he's bothering Haein. The man, with a serious tone, replies that since they're talking about her, he reveals he's known her since she was a student. He gave her guitar lessons and has always cared for her like a younger sister. That's why he warns Yewoon that he doesn't care who he is. If he ever hurts Haein or breaks her heart, he won't sit idly by. He asks if he understood. The young man nods, trying to calm him down, although he also notices a strong smell of alcohol coming from him. Then Ki-hoon gets worked up and says that was a very vague answer, demanding a clear response. He confronts him, asking what he's doing, if he's not going to say anything. At that moment, the drummer grabs him from behind. That makes him even angrier, and annoyed, he yells at him, asking what he's doing, telling him to let go and calling him drum idiot. The drummer, laughing nervously, says that Ki-hoon is completely drunk. Yewoon, still confused, wonders who these people are. At that moment, Ji-won comes over and asks if he got scared. She explains that Ki-hoon is usually a good guy, very funny, but when he drinks too much, he tends to play rough. Also, she clarifies that he's so weak he can't even hit the punching machines properly, so there's nothing to worry about. Then she turns to Haein and asks if that guy is the one she talked about. The girl, with a sweet smile, replies that yes, it's him. The young man, hearing this, is left wondering what she means by that. Ji-won asks Haein if they can leave now. She says yes and thanks them, promising to send them the taxi money later. Before leaving, the blonde turns to Yewoon and asks if he could take Haein home, since she drank a lot today. Yewoon, surprised, asks if he means Haein's house. Ji-won nods, explaining that they were planning to go with her, but they live too far from where she lives. That's why he asks this favor, also saying that Haein trusts him. They begin to leave, telling their friend to take care. She replies that she will and that they'll see each other later. As they walk away, the blonde suggests going for pork soup before heading home, saying he knows a 24-hour place, which cheers up his two friends. Haein says goodbye to them, and Yewoon asks if they are close friends. She replies yes, and that she met all of them thanks to music. She tells him that the guy with curly hair is named Ham Ki-hoon, and he was her guitar teacher. He also has a dance punk band called Idiot Dot, and is super cool. He knows a lot about software too, so he always gives her good advice. Then Yewoon asks about the blonde guy, and she says his name is Lim Ji-won, that he's a bassist, and she met him because he was friends with Ki-hoon. Then he asks if she knows the band of Sunwoo Manga, and she confirms that Ji-won plays there. Yewoon reacts immediately upon hearing that name, saying that Sunwoo Manga is quite famous. Haein confirms and adds that he's impressive. She also says that sometimes Ji-won works as a DJ in clubs, which makes Yewoon comment that he's very versatile. Finally, Haein talks about the drummer, whose name is Yoon Ju-young. She says that since high school he used to practice in his uncle's studio, although they only started talking recently, so they're not exactly close friends. Yewoon reflects on the friends of his possible future girlfriend and says that together they could form a band. The girl laughs and agrees, saying they could start a punk band. However, in a clumsy move, Haein loses her balance and falls right onto Yewoon, who catches her. She looks at him, embarrassed, and apologizes. The young man says it's okay and asks if she drank too much. She pulls away a bit and confirms that yes, explaining they had an after-party today. At that moment, Yewoon takes her hand, a gesture that surprises the girl. But then he explains that he's holding her hand so she doesn't fall. She looks at that simple gesture, smiles, gets closer to him and says it's okay, asking him to hold her tightly until they get home. Yo-woon nods, assuring her that he doesn't want her to trip or fall anywhere. Just then, the train is about to arrive. On their way home, they walk hand in hand, side by side, in a peaceful and comforting silence. Hain yawns slightly, and Yo-woon asks if she's sleepy. She replies no, that she just yawned because of lack of air. Then she gets closer to him and says she can still keep having fun, asking if he got that. The young man, a bit surprised, asks what she wants to do. She answers with another question, wanting to know what he can come up with. Then she looks at him with a mix of mischief and admiration and asks why he's so cute. He, a little embarrassed, replies that he was just about to say the same to her. That little exchange makes them change the way they're holding hands, interlocking their fingers as they look at each other with serenity and warmth full of meaning. Then Yo-woon wonders if all this is just his imagination, but concludes that it doesn't matter. Today, more than ever, the subway feels too quiet to him. When they arrive at the neighborhood and get off the train, Ha-in cheerfully yells that they've arrived, and Yo-woon confirms with a smile, repeating what she said, making her laugh a bit. He asks which way they should go from there and if it's far. She points out that by crossing those buildings, they'll arrive directly at her residence. Yo-woon comments that it's really close. Ha-in explains that since she often goes out at night, she purposely chose a place near the station. She asks if he thinks it's cool. She guides him to her apartment, and Yo-woon says it's time to say goodbye, that she can go in because he'll take a taxi. Ha-in asks if he's going straight home. He replies yes, that he has class early tomorrow and needs to get going to rest. But then he remembers that last time he acted without thinking, and that this time he wants to behave properly. However, Ha-in calls out to him and confesses that she took 3 shots of tequila today just so she could see him. Then she asks if he's really going to leave her like that, taking his hand and asking him to stay a little longer so they can talk. Yo-woon is speechless for a few seconds, then asks if he can stay at her place. She looks at him mischievously and asks if he always asks for permission for this kind of thing, telling him to come in with his own style, just like he did last time.